Hey guys, what's up? It's me again. Just recording my next assignment, which was it's kind of a kind of another shooting off point from the last assignment that I did, where I had to play the Stanley Parable. With this one, apparently my next assignment was to play it some more, was to play it a few more times, but apparently since I did that already, but apparently I've already done part of that since, well, I'm supposed to go with multiple endings. And basically what I'm supposed to talk about is just kind of like I'm talking about failure and really kind of how failure kind of fits in with the game, with the game and how it and the kind of the feedback that you get from failure and things. And the article that I was supposed to read was on, well, the role of failure in video games, which I probably don't need to. I mean, there's obviously failure in video games. Like, you lose all your lives, your health bar goes down, don't meet certain objectives and stuff. Yeah, failure is going to happen. So the article basically said that there were essentially four types of failure in the game. There's, as I mentioned before, energy, life, game termination, and then having to deal with certain setbacks that'll just like restart a game and everything. Obviously with Stanley Parable, the fourth one is probably the most present because if you don't follow, generally, like depending on how you follow certain things, you'll just get kicked back to the beginning, or you'll get like verbally slash physically penalized depending on which ending you actually get in the game. So really the most interesting thing that I thought of in this whole idea of really going with failure was, I guess, really got going in like, how bad you can really fail, how like there are points where like you can badly fail the game if you don't follow the narrator's instructions. Specifically at the beginning of the game, if you just straight up just completely ignore him, just go wherever you want, you usually end up getting the ending where the mannequin pops out, and then yeah, which was the first ending that I got because apparently, like a lot of other people who had played the game later after it came out, I apparently went with the ending of like where I intentionally didn't want to follow the narrator's instructions, and then I kind of have some variations on the rest. But it's just really interesting that uh, again, it goes back to the idea of like it being a really interesting commentary on game design as a whole, to where you can like, instead of like maybe the differences of like branching paths and the things like that, where like you can kind of follow a rigid path. I mean, really the only thing that like you can really do at the end where you don't really have much of an instruction or not is choosing whether to turn off or turn on the mind control machine, where you don't really have much instruction with that. Which obviously, if you turn it off, if you just leave it the way it is, you'll get a bad ending. Whereas if you do the ending where you turn it off, obviously you run off into the flowery fields and yeah, everyone's happy. It's just interesting to think about how, and it really kind of speaks to like the interesting nature of the game, where it's a commentary on game design. How, especially considering how like decision making comes in games, which is really interesting to think about, especially considering how many games there are out there nowadays where you have that choice. Like you have a choice where you can go with branching paths, kind of define your own story, make your own character, uh, just kind of go through a lot of everything. That was uh, really the idea of failure is just, it was really interesting as a whole in it, because it wasn't really failure in the traditional sense. Like you never really, even if you failed in the game, you never really got a game over. Like the game just kind of continued. I mean, yeah, you got a bad end. I mean, you got a bad ending at one point, but you never really. It didn't really. It just kind of started over, really, and with not really much of a sense of like just straight up like, hey, you failed, try again. And really, the only other game I can think of, and really the only other game in recent memory I can think of that really did something like that along the same lines was Heavy Rain, where you could essentially just have characters as a whole just die off in the story, and then they wouldn't have much of a role in it. From what I remember, anyway. I mean, it has been a couple of years since I have played it, so and I really only played through it once. Reminds me, I need to play Beyond Two Souls at some point, but I'm getting sidetracked. So it was. That's really all I. I guess that's really the main thing that that I have to think of when it comes to thinking about failure, at least in the Stanley Parable, of how there is failure, but it's not failure in the direct sense of like it's more failure within the context of the game as opposed to failure within the context of it actually being a game of it being like a video game design as a whole, if that really makes any sense. But it was really overall interesting the way they wove that whole thing together. But I think that's really I think that's really all I had. So anyways, I will see you next week. I will see you guys next week and talk to you later.